Hello, and welcome to our next episode of Product Therapy. I'm your host, Rachel Opsler, EVP of Product at Heap, and with me is Jill Soley. Jill is a product management and marketing executive. She's the author of Beyond Product and happens to be a longtime friend of mine. So welcome, Jill.
Thanks, Rachel. Glad to be here.
Happy to have you too. So let's say you launch something and you've tried a bunch of things. When do you know, or how do you know when to give up versus when to keep trying?
There are a bunch of factors there, right? I mean, one is sort of starting with that list and really sort of validating each of those items, right? Like the value thing is the thing. If you can't figure out, if you can't get to clarity on the value, then you should probably be giving up. If it's really clear that there is customer value, that customers want it, but there are some other challenges in terms of, the model or, something in the usability or whatever, then you can probably iterate on that enough to get to something. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes there are just technology blockers or something and you can't, but you can probably, if you have the runway. But the other piece is there has to be enough sort of runway and patience in your organization. And it has to also really support the goals and strategy of the business, or you're not going to have that support and that runway to get there.
So maybe this is an impossible question to answer, but given that, I think most of us know that, so first the value needs to be there, then you have to make it discoverable, you need to make it easy to use. Why can't we get it right the first time?
Because until a product is actually out in the wild and in customers' hands, everything is hypothesis and opinion, right? We can do all the research in the world, but some of it is our own inherent biases, right? We often want to believe, right? Confirmation bias is real, right? And people will often they'll tell us they'll think they're interested, they'll think they want it, but at the end of the day, will they actually remember to go there tomorrow? Will they click that button? Will it actually be as important to them as they think it is? People don't necessarily always know what they're going to use and aren't necessarily fully honest with themselves, right, about what is really important to them.
This reminds me a lot of, I have been involved in bringing features to market that leverage data science or machine learning. And I think those actually add another interesting layer on top of this, which is it's kind of like trust or, like believability. Like, here's a recommendation. Do I buy it?
Yeah.
Do I trust it? Why should I trust it? And giving enough information to do that, which is, I think, a little bit different than, I think understandability also factors into that, but it's a little bit different than the other elements of like discoverability. Have you had those experiences before as well?
Yeah, there's a whole layer of complexity there. So I think do people trust this product, right? Do they trust your company? Do they trust the product? And the sort of complexity of it to really understand the value that it's actually bringing to them. All of those pieces sort of layer in to make it even that much harder, right?
And I feel like this is one of the frontiers, right? That more and more people are going to be working in is more and more products are going to have data science or machine learning applied to them, and getting the surfacing of that value right. And I also think a lot of it depends on the persona. Like I was at a company where we sold largely to developers, and they wanted to know,
right,
like, why are you recommending this? Whereas other people may just be like, yeah, just give me the recommendation.
Well, and that's the thing. In those situations, you have to be able to provide enough information to get the people who really, really want to know, to get them to trust you. And the others, you have to somehow be able to get the positioning right to get them to trust you without them having to dig in and really understand it, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of a hard balance.
All right. So, since I obviously work for a product analytics company, I would love to talk a bit about measuring product effectiveness. So, what are your thoughts on how do you measure whether, your product or your feature is successful?
So the biggest problem that I see with measuring product effectiveness is just generally misalignment around what the criteria is, right? You release something into the wild and then people say that, it's not doing well. Well, what does that mean, right? What was the expectation up front? And so the most critical thing here, I think, if you're going to invest in anything, is to align up front around what does success look like and what are the goals. And the other piece of that, when there isn't alignment, is to, at its core, those goals should align with the business goals and the business strategy and the overall product goals. And what I've seen is that often you get into a conversation, should we release this? Should we not release this? Is this the right product roadmap or whatever? And those conversations don't start in the place where they need to, which is, what are the overall business goals and business strategy? What are we trying to achieve overall? Because everything should fall from that.
How many places have you been where you feel like that alignment was there and it was clear?
I'm trying to think of one. It's a pretty rare thing to find. I'm amazed actually at how rarely it exists. I think people think it's clear. In their heads, it's clear, but that if you actually try and get people to talk about it, then it's clear that it's not consistent, if there isn't alignment.
So what would you say to the product managers, leaders, other people in the ecosystem out there who are in a position where they're working on something or have been given some sort of guidelines and some sort of direction and have to kind of decide what to do and figure out, what is the success metric?
So what I have found to be effective, and what I try and do, is start with the question, right? So if you just focus on your piece and even propose, this is what we're going to measure, then sometimes people just go, okay, and they sort of wave it off and say it's fine until it comes back around. And so I try and actually go through the layers and say, okay, my understanding is this is the overall goal. Here's our strategy and where we're focusing. So this is why I'm doing this. And sort of try and force the questions or force people to go, wait, that's not right, early on, so that we can get to the right answer together. And particularly, I would say, if you are in a position, right, you're an executive or whatever, you're in a position where you can impact it. If there isn't alignment around those overall business and product goals, then your job is to help try and create that, right?
Yep, makes sense. So what are some of your favorite metrics or go-to metrics when you're trying to plan out, product goals or, look at results?
So of course, my wishy-washy answer, it depends. At the end of the day, right, it all depends on what the goals are for whatever you're releasing, right? And whatever the business goals are, that should determine the right goals. But usually for product, it should be something around and related to whether customers stay or come back to use the product again, right? Because at the end of the day, people trying it or them signing up to buy doesn't really tell you if you've launched something that's useful in solving a problem. It's whether they actually come back and do it again. They stick around and complete the task, or they tell other people and get them into it. Those are the things that really tell you whether you have something that is valuable and sticky.
Gotcha. So in the construct of, which I like, the pirate metrics, acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue, you vote for retention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it doesn't matter how many customers you acquire if they all leave, right? Yep. I want to create something that has value.
Yep, makes sense.